Have you ever felt lonely right inside your own home? Or lost in the middle of a lively party? Has there ever been a moment when a wave of emptiness suddenly swept over you? Maybe you were just having a normal day like any other. And then, out of nowhere, you heard someone share a piece of good news. Suddenly your heart sank. Those gentle reminders to yourself like, "Let my heart be joyful when I see others succeed," now feel strangely hollow. That good news, though it doesn't threaten your life, your well-being, or your interests in any way, somehow drags you into a nameless sadness. Even when the person sharing the news is neither an enemy nor someone you've ever held resentment toward. It feels irrational, doesn't it? And have you ever felt an invisible fear? One that seems so small at first but creeps in quickly, like a thief in the night, pulling you out of your peaceful state and plunging you into deep anxiety. It feels almost intangible at first, but by the time you realize it, it's already quietly taken root and begun to impact your life in ways you can't ignore. In today's world, we're facing a growing crisis of mental health. Anxiety disorders and depression are becoming more and more common. We often think the problem lies out there, somewhere beyond ourselves. But if we look closely, we might be startled to realize that these silent disorders are already taking root within us, hidden beneath the surface, quietly pulling the strings and turning our lives upside down. That rush of excitement after an achievement, the subtle contempt toward others, the longing masked as admiration, the numbness after being hurt too many times, the growing indifference after unrecognized effort. All of these seem like ordinary human instincts. But if you pay close attention, you might notice something deeper. There is an invisible force silently shaping your personality, your reactions, and your choices. Carl Jung once gave a name to the part of us we often try to forget. He called it the shadow. But this shadow isn't a monster. It's not something evil or something to be ashamed of. It's simply the part of you that was left behind, the thoughts you didn't dare speak, the feelings you were told were too much, the moments of anger, jealousy, or shame that you buried so deep, even you forgot they were there. It's the silence after a mistake, the regret that keeps you up at night, the guilt you carry for reasons you can't quite explain. And sometimes, it's not darkness at all. Sometimes the shadow holds your light, your talent, your creativity, your voice that once wanted to rise but was taught to stay quiet. Taught that being too different was dangerous, that being too visible was wrong. So we tucked those parts away, deep inside, and over time we forgot they were even there. Have you ever found yourself saying something that hurt someone, then immediately feeling like, "That's not who I am"? Have you ever felt like a stranger to your own actions? Or escaped into work, into distractions, into anything, just to avoid the stillness where truth begins to whisper? We think we're in control, but often it's the shadow that's steering, the part of us that hasn't been seen, that hasn't been heard, that hasn't been held. And when it rises uninvited, it can shake us. But that shaking is an invitation to turn inward, to meet the parts of ourselves we've abandoned, to offer compassion where we once offered silence, to become whole, not by being perfect, but by being honest. There is a quiet moment, maybe you felt it, when you stop, startled, and ask yourself, why did I just do that? Was that really me? And in that pause, something sacred begins, the flicker of awareness, the first light of healing. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Maybe fate isn't what happens to us. Maybe it's what we allow to guide us when we choose not to look inside. But once we do, once we turn toward the shadow with open eyes and an open heart, we begin to reclaim our story. We begin to remember who we truly are. We often seek answers outside of ourselves, looking through books, advice, healers. But maybe it's time we sit down, in stillness, and ask ourselves the most important question: what am I running from? What part of myself have I rejected? When you begin to face the shadow, not with judgment, not with fear, you will witness something miraculous. The shadow does not come to destroy you. It comes to remind you that you are not yet whole. To face it doesn't mean to fight it. It means to sit, to listen, to look deeply into the wound, into the past, into the place once labeled as not good enough. Only then can the process of transformation begin. Because the shadow, once accepted, becomes power. It carries within it life energy, creativity, authenticity, all the things that were once silenced. The problem is, we don't make the shadow disappear by ignoring it. In fact, the more we avoid it, the stronger it becomes. The more we reject it, the deeper it seeps into every corner of our lives. I know it's not easy. No one ever taught us how to love our own darkness. We grew up in a world that glorifies light, success, positivity, but no one ever told us this. The truest light is born from within the darkness. Don't be afraid when you feel different. Don't panic when you sense an undercurrent stirring inside. They are simply signs that you are still alive, that something real within you is waiting to be seen, to be loved. Walk with me now and let's discover, where does the shadow come from? Are we born with it? When we enter this world, fragile, innocent, full of wonder, we are whole. We don't know how to hide. We don't know how to pretend. We don't yet shape ourselves to please others. We simply are. When we're happy, we laugh freely. When we're angry, we scream without fear of judgment. When we're hurt, we cry out loud. Our hearts are open. Our feelings are true. We are not divided. We are complete. But then, slowly, quietly, and sometimes violently, the world begins to whisper into our ears. Don't cry. Don't be so sensitive. Be quiet. Good girls don't get angry. Boys shouldn't be weak. We listen, then we believe, and we assume that what we're told is the truth. Every time we obey the adults, we're praised, we're loved. Every time we go against their wishes, we receive rejection, scolding, or punishment. And we come to believe that we're not good enough, not worthy. When we were young, what we longed for most was not to be true to ourselves, but to feel accepted, to be loved, to feel safe. And when our true self put us at risk of being rejected, we began to edit ourselves. Little by little, we kept the parts that made others love us. We hid the parts that were criticized or punished. That was the moment the shadow began to form. Not from evil, but from survival, from the innocent and desperate effort of a child, just to be loved. We often imagine the shadow as something dark and terrifying. But in reality, the shadow is nothing more than the forgotten parts of ourselves, the emotions we denied, the fears we buried, the truths we pushed deep down into the heart. It is everything we were once taught was too much, too loud, too emotional, too creative, too rebellious, too curious, or not enough, not strong enough, not smart enough, not lovable enough. And we started to believe those judgments were the truth. Like tiny shards of glass, they cut into our inner world, shaping a self that was no longer whole, but just enough to be accepted. But what is repressed doesn't disappear. What is pushed into the dark doesn't die. It waits, silently, in the background of our lives, in the tone we snap at the ones we love, in the guilt we feel when we allow ourselves to rest, in the fear of being seen too clearly. The shadow speaks through addiction, self-sabotage, perfectionism. It whispers in procrastination, in jealousy, in sudden bursts of anger, in emotional numbness. It shows up in repeating relationship patterns, the ones where we don't understand why we keep falling into the same painful cycle. And we ask ourselves, why do I keep repeating this? Why do I feel so empty? Why can't I change? Something strange happens when we try to be the good person all the time, when we suppress anger, when we numb pain just to keep smiling, even when something inside us is screaming. We think we're becoming more righteous, more kind, more mature. But the truth is, we're only packing more pressure into the dark. The need to please everyone is a mask, perfect morality is often the most seductive disguise. What happens when we suppress the inner shadow? And let's take a closer look at one of the most common ways the shadow shows up when we suppress it. The first sign, Carl Jung called it shadow projection. Repressed anger doesn't disappear. It turns into sarcasm, snapping at someone you love over something trivial. It turns into bitterness, a silent look that avoids eye contact instead of speaking your truth. It becomes sharp passivity, pretending I'm fine while quietly punishing others for your own hurt. Repressed sadness doesn't vanish either. It hardens into numbness, into emptiness. It's comforting to judge others, but behind that judgment is often a fear we haven't dared to face. Have you ever noticed that some people irritate you more than they should? That just seeing them triggers anger or discomfort? That certain traits in others cause you to react more emotionally than seems reasonable? That happens because the shadow makes you see in others what you've rejected in yourself. For example, you hate arrogant people. But maybe there's a part of you that once wanted to be seen and celebrated and got punished for daring to shine. Someone who repressed their need for attention might deeply resent those who freely express themselves. Someone who denies their own aggression will be overly disturbed by people who are blunt or assertive. You mock people who cry easily. Perhaps you were once taught that vulnerability is something to be ashamed of. The problem is, as long as you don't realize that your discomfort comes from within, you'll keep blaming the outside world for your own inner conflict. The second manifestation of the uncontrolled shadow is the repetition of toxic relationships. If you keep getting drawn to the same type of person, someone who makes you feel unworthy, abandons you, or takes advantage of you, don't blame yourself for being not good enough, and don't assume it's just random coincidence. Something inside you is seeking out that pattern, even though it deeply hurts and terrifies you to repeat it. If you were rejected as a child, you might spend your whole life unconsciously searching for people who continue to reject you. If you were taught to suppress your anger, you might be drawn to people who repeatedly abuse your patience. As a way for the shadow to express your rejected energy through others. It may sound irrational to hear me say this now, that something inside you attracted it. Even if you're not aware of it in this moment, let's keep going together. The fear of being rejected, of being alone, of being left behind, it turns into control. You can't let go. You have to hold on, control it, be certain. Because deep inside, there's a part of you that once felt so powerless that now it's terrified of feeling out of control again. And slowly, you lose yourself. Not because you are bad, but because you never learned how to fully embrace yourself. You wear a mask. Perfectionism is a mask. What we reject inside, we start hunting outside, and we begin to live inside a distorted mirror. Relationships start to crack when we try to control others out of the fear of losing them. And if we are lying to ourselves about who we truly are, then who can ever truly see us? The third sign, the shadow has a more powerful mechanism, self-sabotage. This happens when, unconsciously, you create obstacles that block your own growth. You procrastinate, you withdraw, you cause your own failure. Have you ever seen people fail just as they are about to achieve something important? Or those who deeply crave love, connection, and lasting relationships? But every relationship they have ends in incompletion and distance. In crucial moments, they give up too early, repeat poor choices, all because a part of them believes they're not worthy of success or fears the consequences that change might bring. The shadow operates like an invisible gatekeeper, preventing you from stepping out of your comfort zone, even when that comfort zone is your own misery. A strong sign that the shadow is dominating your life is an irrational fear of being judged by others. Have you ever felt a loss of confidence? Or worse, fear and panic, at the thought of standing in front of a crowd to give a presentation, sing a song, or deliver a speech? The fear arrives days before the event. It haunts you. It pulls your attention away from the present moment, You fear the outcome won't meet your expectations, won't satisfy the audience, and you fear becoming a joke in their eyes. Because of that fear, you constantly avoid expressing yourself. Beyond judgment lies criticism. Do you feel fear when you're criticized? If the answer is yes, the shadow within you may be filled with repressed shame. Somewhere in your past, you may have learned that making mistakes is unacceptable, that living authentically is risky because it could mean rejection. And as a result, you live your entire life on the defensive, always trying to please, avoiding anything that might make you seem wrong. But that fear, it doesn't come from the present. It is a shadow from the past, the residue of what you once rejected and buried. Finally, one of the most ruthless signs of the shadow is the inexplicable feeling of emptiness, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Have you ever felt that something is missing in your life, even when everything on the outside seems fine? As if there is always a part that is never filled, an invisible void that nothing can replace? After every success, there is an indescribable emptiness. You run off to find a new challenge to struggle with and conquer, and in exchange for that arduous journey, you get a few moments of blissful enjoyment with praises and admiration, only to return to that soulless emptiness again. This happens because, throughout your life, you have been forced to cut off the true parts of yourself just to be accepted by the world. You have suppressed your true desires, your deep ambitions, and your own authenticity. And now, even if you don't realize it, you are still feeling the weight of the parts you have lost. You learn to survive by cutting your soul in half, but you cannot live fully if you live with only half of yourself. Because when you suppress the shadow, you are also suppressing the most important parts of yourself. You try to show only the good side, trying to erase all traces of darkness, without realizing that you are removing the core pieces of your soul. Over time, this creates a persistent feeling of emptiness, as if something is always missing, but you cannot name it. And here is what few people say. Suppressing the shadow does not make you safer. It makes you more dangerous to yourself and others. Because when you deny something long enough, it takes control of you. You become reactive, you explode, and you are confused by your own behavior. Why did I say that? Why did I do that? Why do I keep hurting the people I love? Because the shadow is holding the steering wheel, and you don't even know when it got the keys. And then the inevitable question arises. How do we break free from this cycle? There will come a time in life when running away no longer works. No matter how fast you run, how busy you get, or how hard you try to be perfect, there is still a voice inside, gentle but persistent, whispering, "What part of myself have I left behind?" And from there, the journey inward begins. Not starting with answers, but beginning with questions. What do we do with the parts of ourselves that don't fit the image we try to maintain? The anger that makes us ashamed, the sadness hidden behind our smiles, the jealousy we try to deny, the inner voice that wants more but fears rejection. Should we fight them, bury them, or pretend they never existed? How do we stop being victims of our own shadow and start integrating it consciously? Carl Jung offered another path. He did not call on us to destroy the shadow. He invited us to meet it. He said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Let that sentence settle within you. We don't heal by pretending to be light. We heal by bringing light to the darkness. Because the truth is, the shadow does not disappear when we ignore it. It waits, hiding in sarcasm, in anxiety, in the desire to control. It shows up in our reactions, in our relationships, in how we judge others or abandon ourselves. And then, when we turn to face it, not with fear, not with shame, but with sincere curiosity, everything begins to change. When we open our hearts to these feelings instead of suppressing them, they begin to change. The shadow softens, not because it disappears, but because finally, it has been seen. And when it is seen, it transforms. Wholeness does not mean perfection. It is the harmony of opposites. You were not born to be just good, just calm, just kind, just happy. You were born to be whole, and wholeness means being able to hold contradictions. It means being grateful while still in pain, being able to feel joy while still healing, being able to love others deeply while learning to love yourself. It's messy, it's authentic, and it's sacred. The more you accept the contradictions within, the more human you become. You no longer need to perform, no need to hide. You begin to live with something deeper: presence. So what does the process of integrating the shadow look like? The first step to integration is to consciously recognize it. This begins by paying attention to your intense emotional reactions. When a person or a situation triggers an excessive reaction in you, stop and acknowledge it. Remind yourself, there is a reaction arising within me. Feel how that reaction affects your body. Flushed face, trembling, goosebumps, racing heart. Instead of immediately chasing after the other person or searching for the cause, quietly turn inward to observe and acknowledge your emotions. This very process of awareness will help soothe the intense feelings. The second step is, allow yourself to feel what you have previously denied. If you have spent your whole life pretending you don't know anger, now is the time to sit with that emotion without fear. This does not mean taking out your anger on others, but having the courage to look inside and admit, yes, I am angry. Yes, I am jealous. Yes, I am afraid. And that's okay. You allow yourself to accept that it is happening and quietly observe its pattern of operation, recognizing it from the moment it starts to arise until it fades away. There will be a surprise waiting for you. Just by completing this step, you will touch the inner peace even when the outside world is still turbulent. For the first time, you feel that you are no longer drained of energy by trying to chase outside to prove or fight for something for the ego. And the miracle is, when you integrate your shadow, you no longer fear the shadows of others. You react less. You become more empathetic, because you understand the feeling of carrying a pain in your heart that no one sees. And that makes you a safe place for yourself and for others as well. The third step, when the body is soothed through the process of awareness and observation, you can continue to go further with questions. What does this reaction say about myself? If someone annoys you because they are arrogant, could it be that they are expressing a confidence you were once taught not to show? Or is there an ego inside you that feels belittled and rejected? If you despise those who crave success, could it be that you also have that desire, but it has been suffocated by limiting beliefs? Or when you have the urge to please others, quickly notice that this habit stems from some unconscious source. Perhaps the fear of abandonment from childhood, or the fear of not being accepted by others. Or when you judge someone, ask yourself, what part of myself am I rejecting? Small actions like these are incredibly powerful. They build trust with yourself, restore inner harmony, help you be more fully present with yourself on your life journey. Step by step, exploring your inner self to better understand yourself as well as life. The shadow only controls you when you pretend it does not exist. When you face it directly, it no longer rules over you. You are bringing it into the light of consciousness. Another essential method is visualization and inner dialogue. Carl Jung once suggested, talk to your shadow as if it were a separate entity. Close your eyes and imagine the repressed part inside you. What does it look like? What does it want to tell you? When we give the shadow a chance to speak, we realize it is not a monster, but a forgotten part of ourselves, a part that only longs to be heard. But remember, integrating the shadow is not an instant process. It is a continuous journey that requires courage and deep honesty. The most important thing is to understand that the shadow within you does not have to be the enemy. Repressed anger can be transformed into strength. Fear can become wisdom. Desire can become creativity. Everything that was once rejected can become the fuel for your growth. Now that you know the origin of the shadow, understand how it impacts your life, and have learned how to begin the journey of integrating the shadow, one final question arises. Do you have enough courage and determination to walk this path? And why do so many people choose to live instinctively, like in their old ways, and accept all the pain surrounding their lives? They will continue to repeat old mistakes, live in cycles of self-destruction, and blame the world for their problems. They will get stuck in the past, nurture resentment, project their pain onto others, and convince themselves that fate or society is the reason for their failures. They will never be brave enough to face the truth about themselves. But you are different. If you have come this far, if you have followed this entire journey, it means a part inside you has awakened. You are tired of being a prisoner of unconscious patterns, tired of feeling controlled by forces you cannot name. That means you are ready to walk the path that few dare to take, the path of integrating the shadow and becoming your most authentic self. But don't be fooled. This path is not easy. Seeing the shadow means giving up the illusion that you fully understand yourself. It means facing the pain of the past, accepting uncomfortable truths, acknowledging that most of what happens in your life is your own responsibility. No longer chasing after any external object to cling to or to feed your weak ego. This is a sacred journey, not to become someone ideal, but to remember who you are before the world taught you to be different, before you fell silent, before you believed that some part of you was too much or not enough, before you split yourself apart just to survive. Working with the shadow is not self-indulgence. It is a sacred responsibility to your truth, to your wholeness, to the life you deserve to live. Because when you turn back and embrace what was once rejected, you don't just find pain, you reclaim strength, passion, intuition, creativity once buried under shame. You reclaim the wild, vibrant, free parts of yourself. And then, little by little, everything changes. You no longer have to try to be good enough. You begin to belong to yourself, not because you have finally become perfect, but because you realize you have always been worthy, even in the chaos, especially in that chaos. You didn't come here to become someone else. You came here to come home to yourself, whole, authentic, and human. So the next time you feel the shadow rising, pause. Don't run, don't fight, breathe, and ask, what are you here to show me? Then listen. Carl Jung reminds us, the goal is not to become good, the goal is to become whole. Let those words settle deep in your heart. Wholeness isn't about erasing the unattractive parts of yourself. It's about recognizing everything, even the things you tried to forget, deny, or feel ashamed of. The healing journey isn't a process of fixing who you are. It's a journey of remembering who you were before the world taught you to hide yourself. And that journey, my friend, is not easy. It demands radical honesty with yourself, deep compassion for the wounds still unhealed, and patience, because the darkness doesn't disappear the moment you face it. But every time you dare to sit with the parts of you you once ran from, every time you open your heart to listen to the shadow instead of trying to control it, you take another step on the path back to truth. And truth has the power to liberate, not the rigid truths others impose on you, but the living truth deep in your bones, that you are worthy, whole, lovable, and valuable, even when you're not perfect. Maybe the time has come, not because you understand everything, but because you deserve to come back to yourself. If you are on that journey, just starting, or already far along, remember you are not alone. We are not few, those quietly choosing to live more honestly, to love more courageously. And I am here with you, not just to share information, but to remember together, to come back together. If this video touches you, don't scroll past as if nothing happened. Share it, not for the views, but as a commitment to yourself. Yes, I choose to come back. Leave a comment. Tell me what you are facing, What part of yourself are you learning to love again? What do you want to reclaim? Your story deserves to be heard, and I am truly listening. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this video. If you found it helpful, please share it with someone you know who might need to hear this. You never know how much it could mean to them. And if you'd like to join me on future journeys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of the upcoming content. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you in the next video.